19. Ali.
You're going easy on me.
Ali glanced across the training room floor. What? Jamshed gave him a wry smile.
I've seen you spar with a Zulfikar before. You're going easy on me.
Ali's gaze ran down the other man's attire. Jamshed was dressed in the same sparring uniform as Ali, bleached white to highlight every strike of the fiery sword. But while Ali's clothes were untouched, the Daevabad's uniform was scorched and covered in charcoal smudges. His lip was bleeding and his right cheek swollen from one of the times Ali had sent him crashing to the floor. Ali raised an eyebrow. You have an interesting idea of easy.
Nah,
Jamshed said in Devasti. Like his father, he retained a slight accent when speaking Jinnistani, a hint of the years they'd spent in outer Devasthana.
I should be in far worse shape. Little burning pieces of Jamshed all over the floor.
Ali sighed. I don't like fighting a foreigner with a Zulfikar, he confessed. Even if we're just using training blades, it doesn't feel fair. And Muntadir won't be happy if he returns to Devasthana to find his closest friend in little burning pieces. Jamshed shrugged.
He'll know to blame me. I've been asking him for years to find a Zulfikari willing to train me.
Ali frowned. But why? You're excellent with a broadsword, even better with a bow. Why learn to use a weapon you can never properly wield?
A blade is a blade. I might not be able to summon its poisoned flames like a Gaziri man, but if I fight alongside your tribesmen, it stands to reason I should have some familiarity with their weapons.
Jamshed shrugged.
At least enough not to jump away every time they burst into flames.
I'm not sure that's an instinct you should suppress. Jamshed laughed.
Fair enough.
He raised his blade.
Shall we continue?
Ali shrugged. If you insist. He swept his Zulfikar through the air. Flames burst between his fingers and licked up the copper blade as he willed them, scorching the forked tip and activating the deadly poisons that coated its sharp edge. Or would have, if the weapon were real. The blade he held had been stripped of its poisons for training purposes, and Ali could smell the difference in the air. Most men couldn't, but then again, most men hadn't obsessively practiced with the weapon since they were 7. Jamshed charged forward, and Ali easily ducked, landing a blow on the Deva's collar before spinning off his own momentum. Jamshed whirled to face Ali, trying to block his next parry.
It doesn't help that you move like a damn hummingbird, he complained good-naturedly. Are you sure you aren't half Peri?
Ali couldn't help but smile. Strangely enough, he'd been enjoying his time with Jamshed. There was something easy about his demeanor. He behaved as though they were equals, showing neither the subservience most jinn did around a Khatani prince, nor the Deva tribe's typical snobbery. It was refreshing. No wonder Muntadir kept him so close. It was hard to even believe he was Kave's son. He was nothing like the prickly Grand Wazir. "Keep your weapon higher," Ali advised. "The Zulfikar isn't like most swords. It's less a thrusting and jabbing motion, more quick slashes and side strikes. Remember, the blade is typically poisoned. You only need to inflict a minor injury." He swung his Zulfikar around his head, the flames soared, and Jamshed veered back, as expected. Ali took advantage of the distraction to duck, aiming another blow at his hips. Jamshed leaped back with a frustrated snort, and Ali easily cornered him against the opposing wall. "How many times would you have killed me by now?" Jamshed asked. 20? 30? More. A real Zulfikar was one of the deadliest weapons in the world. "Not more than a dozen," Ali lied. They continued sparring. Jamshed wasn't improving much, but Ali was impressed by his grit. The visibly exhausted Deva man was covered in ash and blood, but refused to break. Ali had his blade at Jamshed's throat for the third time and was about to insist they stop when the sound of voices drew his attention. He glanced up as Kaveh-i Pramukh, clearly in friendly conversation with someone behind him, stepped into the training room. The Grand Wazir froze. His eyes locked on the Zulfikar at his son's throat, and Ali heard him make a small, strangled noise. "Jamshed!" Ali immediately lowered his weapon, and Jamshed spun around. "Baba?" He sounded surprised. "What are you doing here?" "Nothing," Kaveh said quickly. He stepped back, oddly enough looking more anxious than before as he tried to pull the door shut. "Forgive me, I didn't—" The door pushed past his hand, and Daevabad afsheen strolled into the room. He entered like it was his own tent, his hands clasped behind his back, and stopped when he noticed them. "Sazada Alizaid," he greeted Ali calmly in Devasti. Ali was not calm. He was speechless. He blinked, half expecting to see another man in the afsheen's place. What in God's name was Daevabad doing here? He was supposed to be in Babili with Muntadir, far away on the other side of Devastana. The afsheen studied the room like a general surveying a battlefield. His green eyes scanned the wall of weapons and swept over the various dummies, targets, and other miscellany cluttering the floor. He glanced back at Ali. "Naida poru mejnoas." "What?" I don't speak Devasti," Ali stammered out. Daevabad tilted his head, his eyes brightening with surprise. "You don't speak the language of the city you rule?" he asked in heavily accented Jinnistani. He turned to Kaveh and jerked a thumb in Ali's direction, looking amused. "Spaznastie. Nu hayed vakenjazer." Jamshed went pale, and Kaveh hurried between Ali and Daevabad, open fear on his face. "Forgive our intrusion, Prince Alizade. I didn't realize you were the one training Jamshed." He placed his hand on Daevabad's wrist. "Come, Afsheen. We should be leaving." Daevabad shook free. "Nonsense. That would be rude." The afsheen wore a sleeveless tunic that revealed the black tattoos swirling around his arm. That he didn't cover it said a great deal, but perhaps Ali shouldn't be surprised. The afsheen had been an accomplished murderer long before he had been enslaved by the Ifrit. Ali watched as he ran a hand along the cracked marble lattice lining the windows and gazed at the multicolored paint chips clinging to the ancient stone walls. "Your people have not maintained our palace very well," he remarked. "Our palace?" Ali's mouth dropped open, and he gave Kaveh an incredulous glance, but the Grand Wazir just lifted his shoulders, looking helpless. "What are you doing here, Afsheen?" Ali snapped. "Your expedition was not due back for weeks." "I left," Daevabad said simply. "I was eager to return to my lady's service, and your brother seemed perfectly capable of managing without me." "And Emir Muntadir agreed?" "I did not ask." Daevabad grinned at Kaveh. "And now here I am, getting a rather informative tour of my old home." "The Afsheen wish to see the Banu Nahida," Kaveh said, carefully meeting Ali's gaze. "I told him that unfortunately her time is occupied with training, and indeed on that note, Afsheen, I fear we must leave. I am due to meet—" "You should go," Daevabad interrupted. "I can find my way out. I defended the palace for years. I know it like the back of my hand." He let the words lie for a moment and then turned his attention to Jamshed. His gaze lingered on the young Deva's wounds. "You were the one who stopped the riot, yes?" Jamshed looked positively awed that the Afsheen was speaking to him. Yes, but I was just—" "You are an excellent shot." The Afsheen looked the younger man over and clapped him on the back. "You should train with me. I can make you even better." "Really?" Jamshed burst out. "That would be wonderful." Daevabad smiled and then deftly snatched the Zulfikar away from Kaveh's son. "Certainly. Leave this to the Gaziri." He raised the blade and twisted it, watching as it sparkled in the sunlight.
So this is the famous Zulfikar. He tested the weight, looking it over with a practiced eye, and then glanced at Ali. Do you mind? I would not wish for the hands of a... what is it you call us? Fire worshipper? To contaminate something so sacred to your people. Afsheen? Kaveh started, his voice thick with warning. You may go, Kaveh, Daevabad said, dismissing him. Jamshed, why don't you join him? Let me take your place and spar a bit with Prince Ali's aid. I've heard such great talk of his skills. Jamshed glanced at Ali, looking apologetic and lost for words. Ali didn't blame him. If Zaidi al-Qahtani came back to life and complimented his skill with a Zulfikar, Ali would also be speechless. Besides, the arrogant gleam in Daevabad's green eyes was fraying his last nerve. If the man wanted to challenge him with a weapon he'd never so much as held, so be it. It's fine, Jamshed. Go with your father. Prince Ali's aid, that's not a... Good day, Grand Wazir, Ali said sharply. He didn't take his eyes off Daevabad. He heard Kaveh sigh, but there was no disobeying a direct order from one of the Qahtanis. Jamshed reluctantly followed his father out. The afsheen shot him a much cooler look once the pramukhs were gone. You did quite a bit of damage to the Grand Wazir's son. Ali flushed. Have you never injured a man while training? Not with a weapon I knew my opponent could never properly use. Daevabad raised the Zulfikar to examine it as he circled Ali. This is much lighter than I imagined. By the Creator, you would not believe the rumors about these things during the war. My people were terrified of them. Said Zaidi stole them from the very angels guarding paradise. That's the way of things, isn't it? Ali asked, the legend outweighing the flesh and blood figure. His meaning was clearly not lost on the afsheen, who looked amused. You are probably right. He charged then at Ali with a hard right strike that, if it had been a broadsword, would have knocked his head off from the force alone. But the Zulfikar was not that, and Ali easily ducked, taking advantage of Daevabad's stumble to sweep the broadside of his blade on his back. I've wanted to meet you for some time, Prince Ali's aid, Daevabad continued, sidestepping Ali's next thrust. Your brother's men were always talking about you. I've heard you're the best Zulfikari in your generation, as talented and as fast as Zaidi himself. Even Muntadir agreed. He says you move like a dancer and strike like a viper. He laughed. He's so proud. It's sweet. You rarely hear a man speak of his rival with such affection. I'm not his rival, Ali snapped. No, Then who becomes king after your father if something should happen to Muntadir?
Ali drew up. What? Why? A briefly irrational fear seized his heart. Did you?
Yes, Daevabad said, his voice thick with sarcasm. I murdered the emir and then decided to return to Daevabad and crow about it because I always wondered what it would be like to have my head on a spike.
Ali felt his face grow warm.
Don't fret, little prince, the afsheen continued. I enjoyed your brother's company. Muntadir has a taste for life's pleasures and talks too much when he's in his cups. What's not to like about that?
The comment threw him, as it was presumably meant to, and Ali was unprepared when the afsheen raised his Zulfikar and rushed him again. The afsheen feinted left and then spun, faster than Ali had ever seen a man move, before bringing the blade down hard. Ali blocked him, but just barely, his own Zulfikar ringing with the force of the hit. He tried to push back, but the afsheen didn't budge. He held the Zulfikar with only one hand, not showing a hint of weariness. Ali held tight, but his hands trembled on the hilt as the afsheen's blade neared his face. Daevabad leaned close, putting his weight into the sword.
Brighten. Ali's Zulfikar burst into flames, and Daevabad instinctively jerked back. But the afsheen recovered quickly, swinging his Zulfikar toward Ali's neck. Ali ducked, feeling the whiz of the blade as it passed just over his head. He stayed low to aim a fiery blow at the backs of the afsheen's knees. Daevabad stumbled, and Ali darted up and away. He could kill me, Ali realized. One misstep was all it would take. Daevabad could claim it was an accident, and who would be able to dispute it? The Pramukhs were the only witnesses, and Kaveh would probably be overjoyed to cover up Ali's murder.
You're being paranoid.
But when Daevabad struck out again, Ali met his advance with a bit more gusto, finally forcing him back across the room. The afsheen lowered his Zulfikar with a wide grin. Not bad, Zaidi. You fight very well for a boy your age.
Ali was getting sick of that smug smile.
My name isn't Zaidi.
Muntadir calls you that. He narrowed his eyes.
You're not my brother.
No, Daevabad agreed. I am certainly not. But you do remind me of your namesake.
Considering that the original Zaidi and Daevabad had been mortal enemies in a century-long war that wiped out whole swaths of their race, Ali knew that wasn't a compliment, but took it as such anyway. Thank you. The afsheen studied the Zulfikar again, holding it so that the copper blade gleamed in the sunlight streaming through the windows.
Don't thank me.
The Zaidi al-Khatani I knew was a bloodthirsty rebel fanatic, not the saint your people have turned him into."
Ali bristled at the insult. He was bloodthirsty? Your Nahid council was burning Shafit alive in the Medan when he rebelled. Daevabad lifted one of his dark eyebrows.
"Do you know so much about the way things were a millennium before your birth?"
"Our records tell us."
"Your records?"
The afsheen laughed, a mirthless sound.
"Oh, how I would love to know what those say. Can the Gaziri even write? I thought all you did out there in your sand pits was feud and beg for human table scraps."
Ali's temper flashed. He opened his mouth to argue and then stopped, realizing just how carefully Daevabad was watching him, how intentionally he'd chosen his insults. The afsheen was trying to provoke him, and Ali would be damned if he was going to go along with it. He took a deep breath. "I can go sit in a Deva tavern if I want to hear my tribe insulted," he said dismissively. "I thought you wanted to spar." Something twinkled in the afsheen's bright eyes.
"Right you are, boy."
He raised his blade. Ali met his next thrust with a clash of their blades, but the afsheen was good, improving at a frighteningly fast rate, as if he could literally absorb each of Ali's actions. He moved quicker and struck harder than anyone Ali had ever fought, had ever even imagined possible. The room grew hot. Ali's brow felt oddly damp, but of course that wasn't possible. Pure-blooded djinn didn't sweat. The power behind the afsheen's blows made it feel like sparring with a statue. Ali's wrists ached. It was getting difficult to maintain his grip. Daevabad was backing him into a tight corner when he abruptly broke away and lowered his Zulfikar. He sighed as he admired the blade.
"Ah, I have missed this. Peacetime may have its virtues, but there's nothing like the rush and clash of your weapon against the enemies."
Ali took the moment to catch his breath. "I'm not your enemy," he said through gritted teeth, though he very much disagreed with the sentiment right now. "The war is over."
"So people keep telling me."
The afsheen turned away, strolling slowly across the room and deliberately leaving his back unprotected. Ali's fingers twitched on his Zulfikar. He forced himself to push away the strong temptation to attack the other man. Daevabad wouldn't have put himself in such a position if he were not entirely confident he could defend it.
"Was it your father's idea to keep us separated?" the afsheen asked. "I was surprised by how eager he was to see me gone from Daevabad, even offering up his firstborn as collateral, and yet I'm still blocked from seeing my Banu Nahida. I was told there's a waiting list for appointments the length of my arm."
Ali hesitated, thrown by the abrupt change in subject. Your arrival was unexpected, and she's busy. Perhaps that order did not come from Nahri. Daevabad snapped, and in an instant Ali felt the room grow hotter. The torch opposite him flared, but the afsheen didn't seem to notice, his gaze fixed on the wall. It was where most of the weapons were stored, 100 varieties of death hanging from hooks and chains. Ali couldn't help himself. Looking for a scourge? Daevabad turned back around. His green eyes were bright with anger. Too bright. Ali had never seen anything like it, and the afsheen was not the first freed slave he'd met. He glanced again at the blazing torches, watching as they flickered wildly, almost as though they were reaching for the former slave. The light faded from the afsheen's eyes, leaving a calculating expression on his face. I hear your father intends to marry Banu Nahri to your brother. Ali's mouth fell open. Where had Daevabad learned that? He pressed his lips together, trying to hide the surprise in his face. Kaveh, it had to have been. Considering the way those fire worshippers were whispering together when they entered the training room, Kaveh was probably spilling every secret he knew. Did the Grand Wazir tell you that? No. You just did. Daevabad paused long enough to enjoy the shock on Ali's face. Your father strikes me as a pragmatic man, and marrying them would be a most astute political move. Besides, you are rumored to be some sort of religious fanatic, but according to Kaveh, you are spending a great deal of time with her. That would hardly be appropriate, unless she was meant to join your family. His eyes lingered on Ali's body. And Ghassan clearly doesn't mind crossing tribal lines himself. Ali was speechless, his face warm with embarrassment. His father was going to murder him when he found out that Ali had let slip such information. He thought fast, trying to come up with a way to undo the damage. Banu Nahri is a guest in my father's home, afsheen, he started. I'm simply trying to be kind. She wished to learn to read. I would scarcely say there's anything inappropriate about that. The afsheen drew closer, but he wasn't smiling now. And what are you teaching her to read? Those same Ghaziri records that demonize her ancestors? No, Ali shot back. She wanted to learn about economics, though I'm sure you filled her ears with plenty of lies about us. I told the truth. She had a right to know how your people stole her birthright and nearly destroyed our world. And what of your part in such things? Ali challenged. Did you tell her that, Daevabad? Does she know why you're called the Scourge? There was silence, and then for the first time since the afsheen entered the room with his smug smile and laughing eyes, Ali saw a trace of uncertainty in his face. She doesn't know. Ali had suspected as much, though Nahri was always careful not to speak of the afsheen in his presence. Oddly enough, he was relieved. They'd been meeting for a few weeks now, and Ali was enjoying her company. He didn't like thinking that his future sister-in-law would be loyal to such a monster had she known the truth. Daevabad shrugged, but there was a flash of warning in his bright eyes. I was just following orders. That's not true. The afsheen lifted one of his dark eyebrows. No? Then tell me what your sandfly histories say of me. Ali could hear his father's warning in his mind, but he didn't hold back. They speak of Kwaizi for one. The afsheen's face twitched. And you were taking no orders once Daevabad fell and the Nahid Council was overthrown. You led the uprising in Devasthana. If you can call such indiscriminate butchery an uprising. Indiscriminate butchery? Daevabad drew himself up, his expression scornful. Your ancestors slaughtered my family, sacked my city, and tried to exterminate my tribe. You have great nerve to judge my actions. You exaggerate, Ali said dismissively. No one tried to exterminate your tribe. The Devas survived just fine without you around to destroy mixed villages and bury innocent jinn alive. The afsheen snorted. Yes, we survived to become second-class citizens in our own city, forced to bow and scrape to the rest of you. An opinion formed after spending, 2 days in Daevabad? Ali rolled his eyes. Your tribe is wealthy and well-connected, and their quarter is the cleanest and most finely run in the city. You know who are second-class citizens? The shafit who... Daevabad rolled his eyes. Ah, there it is. It's not a discussion with a djinn until they start bemoaning the poor, sad shafit they can't stop creating. Suleiman's eye. Find a goat if you can't control yourselves. They're comparable enough to humans. Ali's hand tightened on the Zulfikar. He wanted to hurt this man. Do you know what else the histories say about you? Enlighten me, djinn. That you could have done it. Daevabad frowned, and Ali continued. Most scholars believe you could have defended an independent Devasthana for a long time, long enough to free a few of the surviving Nahids, perhaps even long enough to retake Daevabad. The afsheen went still, and Ali could tell he had struck a nerve. He stared at the prince, and when he spoke, his voice was soft, his words intent. It sounds like your family was very lucky the Ifrit killed me when they did, then. Ali didn't break away from the other man's cold gaze. God provides." It was cruel, but he didn't care. Daevabad was a monster. Daevabad lifted his chin and then smiled, a sharp smile that reminded Ali more of a snarling dog than a man. "And here we are discussing ancient history again when I promised you a challenge." He raised the Zulfikar. It burst into flames, and Ali's eyes went wide. No non-Ghaziri man should have ever been able to do that. The afsheen looked more intrigued than surprised. He gazed at the flames, the fire reflected in his bright eyes. "Ah, now isn't that fascinating?" It was the only warning Ali got. Daevabad charged him, and Ali whirled away, flames licking down his own Zulfikar. Their weapons met with a crash, and Daevabad shoved his blade up and along Ali's until the hilt caught his hands. Then he kicked him hard in the stomach. Ali fell back, rolling quickly away when Daevabad slashed down in a motion that would have sliced his chest open if he hadn't moved fast enough. Well, I suppose Abba was right, he thought, jumping up as the afsheen swept his Zulfikar at his feet. Daevabad and I probably wouldn't have made very good travel companions. The afsheen's calm was gone, and with it much of the reserve Ali now realized the other man had been showing. He was actually an even better fighter than he'd let on. But the Zulfikar was a Ghaziri weapon, and Ali would be damned if some Deva butcher was going to beat him with it. He let the afsheen pursue him across the training room, their fiery blades clashing and sizzling. Though he was taller than Daevabad, the other man was probably twice his bulk, and he was hoping his youth and agility would eventually turn the duel in his favor. And yet that didn't appear to be happening. Ali dodged blow after blow, becoming increasingly exhausted and a little afraid. As he blocked another charge, he caught sight of a hanjar glinting on a sunny window shelf across the room. The dagger peeked out among a pile of random supplies. The training room was notoriously messy, overseen by a kindly yet absent-minded old Ghaziri warrior no one had the heart to replace. An idea sparked in Ali's head. As they fought, he started letting his fatigue show, along with his fear. He wasn't acting, and he could see a glimmer of triumph in the afsheen's eyes. He was clearly enjoying the opportunity to put the stupid young son of a hated enemy in his place. Daevabad's forceful blows shook his entire body, but Ali kept his Zulfikar up as the afsheen followed his lead toward the windows. Their fiery blades hissed against each other as Ali was pushed hard against the glass. The afsheen smiled. Behind his head, the torches flared and danced against the wall like they'd been doused in oil. Ali abruptly let go of his Zulfikar. He snatched the hanjar and dropped to the ground as Daevabad stumbled. Ali rolled to his feet and was on the afsheen before the other man recovered. He pressed the dagger to his throat, breathing hard but went no further. "Are we done?" The afsheen spat. "Go to hell, sandfly." And then every weapon in the room flew at him. Ali threw himself to the floor as the weapons wall purged itself. A spinning mace whooshed over his head, and a Dukharistani pole arm speared his sleeve to the ground. It was over in a matter of seconds, but before Ali could process what had happened, the afsheen stomped hard on his right wrist. It took every bit of self-control not to scream as Daevabad ground the heel of his boot into the bones of Ali's wrist. He heard something crack, and a searing pain rushed through him. His fingers went numb, and Daevabad kicked the khanjar away. The Zulfikar was at his throat. "Get up," the afsheen hissed. Ali did so, cradling his injured wrist through the ripped sleeve. Weapons littered the floor, the chains and hooks that had held them dangling broken on the opposite wall. A chill went down Ali's back. It was the rare djinn who could summon a single object, and that was with far more focus over a short distance. But this? And so soon after drawing flames from the Zulfikar? He shouldn't be able to do any of this. Daevabad didn't seem bothered. Instead, he gave Ali a coolly appraising look. "I wouldn't have thought such a trick your style." Ali gritted his teeth, trying to ignore the pain in his wrist. "I suppose I'm full of surprises." Daevabad looked at him for a long moment. "No," he finally said. "You're not. You're exactly what I would expect." He picked up Ali's Zulfikar and tossed it over. Surprised, Ali caught it with his good hand. "Thank you for the lesson, but sadly, the weapon did not live up to its fearsome reputation." Ali sheathed his Zulfikar, offended on its behalf. "Sorry to disappoint you," he said sarcastically. "I didn't say I was disappointed." Daevabad ran his hand over a war axe protruding from one of the stone columns. "Your charming and cultured brother, your pragmatic father. I was starting to wonder what happened to the Katanis I knew. Starting to fear my memories of the Zulfikar-wielding fanatics who destroyed my world were wrong." He eyed Ali. "Thank you for this reminder." Ali was lost for words, suddenly fearing he'd done far worse than reveal his father's plans regarding Nahri. "You misunderstand me." "Not at all." The afsheen gave him another sharp smile. "I was also once a young warrior from a ruling tribe. It's a privileged position." "Such utter confidence in the rightness of your people, such unwavering belief in your faith." His smile faded. He sounded wistful, regretful. "Enjoy it." I am nothing like you, Ali shot back. I would never do the things you did.
The afsheen pulled open the door. Pray you're never asked to, Zadie.